Guys, it's Abhijit Kumar Jha, and in this video, we're going to talk about REST APIs and how to build them with Spring Boot. So, what are APIs? Okay, so you might have heard this fancy word API. So, what API actually is? APIs are softwares or code that basically transfer data from one software to another. That's it. Let's say I am a stock exchange. Okay, I am BSE, Bombay Stock Exchange. I want to transfer my stock data to you or to a stockbroker like Grow or Zerodha. I do that using APIs. I have some data. I throw my data to Zerodha or Grow or to you, maybe to any other platform, right? Through my APIs. So what are APIs? APIs are code that take my data and transfer that data over in the internet using protocols like HTTP. It's not necessary that they use HTTP protocols, but it's one of the protocols that we use to transfer data over internet, right? So that's what APIs do. They just transfer data. And honestly, it's one of the most critical things to know as a software engineer, because you might create and a good algorithm. You might create a good model, machine learning model if you're an ML engineer. But every engineer has to transfer the results of those model or algorithms through APIs. Okay, you might send it to an external client, you might send it to your own service within the organization, but you have to send data, right, in every single project. So, learning how to make robust APIs is very important. And in this video, I'm going to teach you how to build APIs using Spring Boot. Now, Spring Boot is a very popular framework in Java ecosystem, right? So we're going to use Spring Boot to create an application like Zerodha or any other stockbroking platform that you can imagine. It's not going to be a literal stockbroking platform. I'm just going to make one service of that stockbroking platform, which is going to be a user service. So our application is going to handle the user data for those application or for those applications. It's going to be just one service. Many such services come together to form such a big application. Okay, so we are just make one application, one service for a large application like Zero. Okay, so let's start. So first I'm going to go and create my Spring Boot project. For that, I'll go on Spring Initializer and let's open it. Okay, so I'm comfortable with Maven. I'll choose Maven. Group, I'll call it stock broker. Cool. Artifacts are is basically the name of your project. So I'm going to call it user service because it is user service. Service. Okay. Jar, fine. Java 17, fine. I'm going to add some dependencies. Lombok, I like Lombok. Spring Web for sure. We're going to use JPA and MySQL database to store data. Okay, so MySQL driver is going to be required. Fine. Okay, seems cool. So I'll click on generate. So as you can see, my user service has been generated. I just have to unzip it and we can start coding, right? So it's very simple. So let's go. To Spring Boot. I'll I'll just transfer it here and unzip it. I'll just open it with IntelliJ IDEA. I'm going to use IntelliJ IDEA in this project. Okay. Yeah, I trust this project. Fine. Okay. Now let's wait. Just wait to, you know, uh, we have to wait for the things to get started. It's indexing everything. It's going to download a bunch of stuff related to Spring and all that stuff. Okay. 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 हाँ भाई गलत ठीक है. Let's run it once. So as you can see, this is our Java folder. This is where we're going to write most of our code. and this is the main Spring Boot project. It's going to throw error now because it's not configured to a database, and it will throw some errors. Um, yeah, as I thought. Okay, and this is your pom.xml. So this file has all your configurations. Okay, so whatever dependencies we added, dependencies are nothing but external libraries. People who have written those libraries, we are going to just import those libraries to do a lot of heavy lifting. Okay, so all the dependencies that we included, it's all here. Okay, you can add some more dependencies if you want to. If we, let's say, use something like web client, we'll have to add other dependencies like reactive web. Okay, so any other dependencies that you use, you have to add it in pom.xml. Fine. So this is a very important file. It's going to handle all your dependencies. And every time you add your dependency, right, you have to reload this pom.xml by clicking here, go to Maven and reload the project. So every time you add some more dependencies, you reload this. Okay. So that's just basic of Maven in IntelliJ. It's very simple over here. And this is your actual Spring Boot application. So we'll write our Spring Boot application and we just have to run this file and our Spring Boot application will be run. Okay. Now let's do one thing first. I'm going to show you application.properties. Now this application.properties file will have all the configuration that you want to do for this project. For example, you have to set up a database, okay? So that URL, password, everything you will put in here. You can change the port in which your application runs. By default, it's 8080. If you want to do is 8084. You can keep it anything you want to. Okay. Hello, hello, hello. Hello, hello. Hello, hello, hello. Okay, so we can set our properties of our application over here. So it's pretty simple. So let's set it up. So first of all, we'll have to add the URL of our database, right? So I'll write spring dot data source dot URL. Okay, URL. What's going to be the URL? So it's going to be a JDBC URL. Okay, J colon SQL uh, localhost. By default, it's in port 3306 for everyone. Okay, and then you can just name your name your what do you call database. Okay, so I'll call mine stock broker. Okay, so this is your URL. You have to provide your username and password as well. So I'll copy this. Okay, the spring.data source username. My username is root, and then spring.data source dot password. My password is also root. Then what else? Yeah, I have to provide my driver as well. So spring dot again data source dot driver um, class name is equals to class, sorry, not this, class name equal to com dot, that's going to be MySQL dot cj dot jdbc dot driver try. This was my configuration for MySQL. Okay, this was my MySQL configuration. You can just copy this and paste it and write according to your database. You might have a different username and password. So now there's going to be hibernate settings. Now, we can obviously dwell into a lot of depth of Hibernate, JPA, but it's going to be complicated. I'll keep it very simple for now. Just remember it. Okay. We can go in depth in these topics like Hibernate and MySQL, definitely. Okay. But not for now. So for Hibernate settings, right, Spring JPA dot hibernate dot ddl dot sorry, not ddl auto equals to update. So what this will basically do is make Hibernate. So Hibernate is our ORM, and JPA is a interface over that ORM. Okay. So I'll explain it in much better way later on. But what ORM does it takes the task of handling all the transactions and uh, mm, contacting your database, connecting to your database, and fetching data and storing data to the database. Okay, so what DDL Auto does it automatically make change. Okay, if you don't do it auto, you will have to commit yourself. Now, Spring, one more handy thing is Spring.jpa dot show SQL. Okay, if you do this to be true, so what's going to happen is you're going to get the SQL commands that Hibernate executes for you. Okay, and I think this is it. We'll see if some issues arise, but for now, let's run the application and see. Uh, if everything is correct, the application should surely run. No, something is wrong. Error in the name, entity manager. Okay. Driver com JBSL JDBC CJ JDBC driver claims not to accept JDBC URL. This URL मेरा दिक्कत है 3306 seems correct. Let's see. Okay, now it's perfectly started. So there were some issues in application properties. My MySQL spelling was wrong, so that was pretty lame. And I have used stocks database, which I already created in my MySQL database, and then I link that database to my URL. Okay, it's pretty simple, and our dialect, I don't know it's necessary or not. It is sometimes necessary in a lot of in some systems, so it's pretty useful to keep it. Okay. Um, as you can see, it's saying no direct specific is needed, so I'll comment it, and maybe it should. Okay. Okay, so as you can see, it's saying that our server has been started at 8084. So let's check this server out. Okay, so you can go to any browser and type localhost localhost at 8084. Okay, so it says application has no explicit mapping because we haven't thrown anything over here. That's why it shows like this. Okay, so let me show you something with our API. Let's try to throw something. Let's try to see something on this web page. Okay. Okay, so for that, what I'll do is I'll go in my Java. Okay, I'll make a class. I'll call it controller. So controller is going to be the class which is going to handle all the requests. So if you're requesting my server something, it's going to be handled by controller. If my server is sending something to you, it's going to be handled by controller. So all the URLs where at which URL you get what is handled by our controller. Okay. Now, so For it to be registered as a controller in Spring Boot, I have to use annotations. So it's going to be annotation REST controller. So when you do it, I'll write an annotation REST controller. My Spring Boot application recognizes this as a controller. Okay, that's a very important step. Now I will write a simple function. Let's say public string, not to string, but okay, public string hello. Okay, so hello is a function, and this is going to return a simple string. Okay, so it's going to return something like welcome to Spring Boot, um, Spring Boot video. Spring Boot. Okay, welcome to Spring Boot. Something like that. I'll return it. Okay. So will this throw something? No, because we have to map it to a URL. Okay, and for that I'll use annotation called get mapping. Get mapping. Okay, I will map it to slash. So slash is the starting URL, is the home URL. Okay. So slash. So when I go to the localhost, the first thing is going to show me is welcome to Spring Boot. So let's see again. Um, okay, still showing nothing. Yeah, because I have not reloaded my project yet. I reloaded. Okay, so again my project is started at 8084. It's reloaded and it says welcome to Spring Boot. Okay, so whatever I request at this URL, okay, in my controller, it's going to be shown on this web page. Okay, that's cool, right? So I can write anything over here, and that's going to be shown over there. Okay, so that's the role of a controller. If I do the mapping differently, so so this basically means is that if I go to slash hello, URL slash hello, I will get this this function is going to be essentially executed. Okay, so I'll rerun it again and show you. Okay. Okay, it shows white label error. That means there's nothing mapped at this. But if I go to hello, I get welcome, the string that I'm throwing from the controller. Okay, so let's don't waste our time and actually go ahead and create our project. Okay, that was a basic of controller. Okay, but what I want to do, I want my project, my application to maintain users for a stock broking platform, right? I want it to maintain users for a stockbroking platform. So I'll make those users, I'll make an entity. So I'll make a package called entity. Entity. Okay. So so in these entities, I'll have the objects that I'm going to use in my project. So in this project, I have mainly two objects. I have a user and I have stocks, right? So I have users and stocks. So entities, you can think it as a table in a database. Okay. So these are the things that we're going to use. So what we can do is we're going to make a class and let's call it user. Okay, and we're gonna make one more class. We'll call it stocks. Let's call it user stocks. Okay. Okay, so it's user stocks. So you're gonna have some data, right? It has some data. It will have some ticker, and what ticker basically means is the
the annotation which is used for the stock. For example, for Apple is going to be APL, something like that. Okay, so string ticket, fine. It's going to have a name, right? Have string name. Okay, now as this is user stock, it's going to have a value, uh, private integer called quantity. Okay, quantity, and I'll also have integer that's basically purchase price. Okay, so I might have more. Okay, but for simplicity I'll take all these. Now I need getter setters for all these values. Okay, and I also need some extra function like toString for this. So for all those purposes I'll use a simple annotation called data, which I have from Lombok. So Lombok is very handy, so it's going to make all the getter setters for all these variables. Okay, so pretty cool, right? Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a user stock table in my database. For that, I'm going to use an annotation called entity. Entity. Okay, cool. And for this table to be registered, I need a primary key. And to make it a primary key, I'll use annotation ID. Okay, pretty simple. So now I have a table in my database named user stocks, which has all these data, and I'm going to make a user. How? So it's going to be private long. Let's keep it. We don't have an ID for a user. We'll have a name, right? Have a name. um, we might have a user wallet, right? A wallet balance, something like that. So we'll have a balance that he has, and along with that we'll have a list of what we'll have a list of stocks that he owns, right? We'll have a list of user stocks. Let's call it stocks, right? It's going to take it's going to import class from Java util. Okay, now as you can see, this user is having these stocks. Fine. So again, I'm going to do same thing. I'm going to write a data annotation over here from Lombok, and I'm going to make it a entity, N T I T Y. Okay, make an entity. Now again, as I did, I'm going to make it a ID. Okay, and along with that, um, from Jakarta persistence, I'm going to make it an auto generated value, right? Because I want my IDs to be generated automatically. I don't want to write manually IDs for users, but I will write manually tickers for stocks. Okay, because stocks are very specific. Okay, and these are string values. So this is generated value. Okay, generated value. I think it was. Okay, and I have to keep the strategy as auto generate. Yes, auto generate. Fine. So basically, my ID will be auto generated. It's pretty simple. Now there's one more thing we have. Okay. Now it's pretty clear that user stock is going to be one data, right? And my user is going to be one data. So I have two tables: user table and user stock table. But how is this going to be stored in MySQL database? My user has a list of stocks. So how actually this should be stored is in MySQL database, we'll make a third table in which I'll store the user ID and the stock ticker. Primary keys in a table. That's how ideally it should be stored for the perfect normalization. okay, of the SQL, of the MySQL table of. So if you don't understand a lot about normalization and stuff, don't worry about it. This is how it stores. Basically, what you're going to do is you're going to make one more table, and you're going to add primary keys of both both the entities which are related to each other. Okay, so user and user stocks are related to each other, and we don't have to do that manually. JPA will do it for us. Okay, so we have to just write an annotation called one to many. One to many annotation, what basically means that each user can have multiple stocks. That's it. What this annotation is going to do is, in the database, it's going to make a separate table in which it's going to have basically primary keys of both the tables in the relation. Okay, I know it's a bit complicated, but I think it should be okay. You'll understand more as we go ahead. Okay, so I have both these entities. Okay, fine. So now let's work on our controller again. Okay, what all features do you want? I just want to CRUD my user for now. Just basic CRUD. I want to create my user. I want to delete my user. Okay, and I want to update my user. And okay, so a basic CRUD application. Create, update, delete. Okay, so let's do it. So first is going to be get all the users. Okay. So how am I going to do is, um, I'll make an users. Okay, and this function is going to return all the users. So it's going to return a list of users. Okay, users, get all users. Okay, import, it should be an entity, right? User. Okay, it's user. Fine. Import class user. Okay, it's gonna get all the list of users. Import class list as well. Okay, now I can technically do it over here, but I won't. Okay, I'll make a service layer. This is how you should proceed in any Spring framework, in any Spring project. You make entities, you make service to work on those entities, and then you also make a repository layer. A layer, a class, which basically talks to your database. Okay, you do that in 3 levels. It makes your program more manageable. Okay, it has a lot of benefits. We'll talk about it later. Okay, so okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a service. Okay, so go here, create one more package. Let's call it service. Okay, in this service, I'm going to make a class called user service. I'm not going to make a class first. I'm going to make an interface, user service interface. Okay, so this is my interface, and I'll basically tell the interface what all kind of functions I want in my user, right? So I want a function called list users. Along with that, I'll want public to get one user. Okay, user get, let's call it get user, and in this I'll pass my ID. Okay, I'll pass an ID. I want to get the entire data of the user. Okay, what else function you will need? uh, Pass in user, update user, Okay, and I'll give the entirety of user. Okay, okay, cool. And along with that, I also want delete user. So delete it and then throw a user again. So delete user long id. Okay, okay, that seems correct. Fine. Now I'm going to implement this class. Okay, how I'm going to implement is now I'm going to make a class, call it user service implementation. Now you might think that this is unnecessary, but slowly you'll understand. And when you look at production level codes, you'll understand why we follow this kind of pattern. It's going to implements user service. Okay, uh, just a second. Implement all methods. Yes, I'm going to implement all the methods. Okay, so I'm going to implement all these methods here. So let's go to controller and finish our controller, then we'll come back here. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to make user service. Okay, let's call it service. Cool. And I'm going to use this service to do all the functions, right? So I'm called service dot get all users. Okay, now these functions are obviously not implemented correctly right now, so nothing will happen. And okay, so when I go to slash users, I want to get all the users. Fine, get mapping. Now when I go to users slash, if I pass an id, I want that particular id. Now this is not going, it can't be a string, right? It's a string currently. It should not be a string. It will be a variable. This id is going to be a variable, right? And now I'm make a function public user uh, get user um, long id, and then return service dot get user and id. Now the thing is, how I'm going to get this id from the user? I'm going to get it from path variable. From path variable. So what this path variable is, when I pass something here, it is path variable. This hello is a path variable. /1/2 is going to be path variable. So it's going to capture this path variable and take it as ID. Okay, so it's intelligent enough to do that. It has been programmed enough to do that. So no issues. Okay, simply we have this path. So pass the path variable is going to get the ID. Okay. Okay. Hmm. Uh, let's keep these two services for now, and let's try to do it. Okay, so now I'll make a repository layer, so that repository layer is going to communicate with our database. Okay, so I have entity layer, I have controller layer, I have service layer. I'm going to make a repository layer. Let's call it repository. Okay, so I have this repository, new Java class. I'm gonna make an interface and just look at this. This I'm now you're gonna see the power of JPA. Okay, so let's call it repo. Okay, I'll call it yeah, I'll call it user repo. User repo. This is going to extend. Sorry, something weird happened. Extend JPA. It should come automatically. Yeah, it is extending JPA repository. I have to pass two things over here. It's a Java generic repository. So I have to pass two data types over here. First is going to be my user. Second, it's actually going to be long. So this is the type of this is the type of the primary key of my entity. Okay, I have to pass it in this format. Okay, in object format, in wrapper class format. Okay, instead of the primitives, import class here. Okay, and this interface has a lot of existing methods that we can use. Okay, we can write our own custom methods, but for this video we won't even need that. Okay, now let's go to service. Let's go to user service. Yeah, I got to remember one more thing. In this, I'll make cascade is sorry. Okay, into all. Okay, so what this cascade does is whatever change I make to this db, it's going to also going to extend that to the user stock db. If I delete, let's say, a user, all the related stocks will be deleted. Okay, and so on. So, and if I add a user, the data will also be added in the stock table. Okay, so cascade all is pretty important over here. What I'm missing? Yes, service implementation. Uh, okay, I'll call my repository over here. I'll use user repo, and I'll return repo dot find all. So we already have a function called find all. As I said, you don't have to do a lot of things over here. And we also have find repo dot find by id. Yeah, find by id. It's going to take id. Okay, I know it's going to be, yeah. So it throws something called optional variable. So I think there's a function dot or else throw. Yeah. So if you do, okay, so it's optional user. Okay, you might not get the user. That's why you have to add this extra line or else throw some error. Okay, that's it. So seems fine. Let's deal with these two, and then we'll come on and implement all these other methods as well. Okay, controller, I have these two. I've implemented the service user stock. Okay, I have not made the stock service. We'll make it later maybe. Let's see if we are able to work with this much or not. Okay, let's rerun it and see. Yeah, obviously I will not get anything because I have not implemented the post method, and there's some issue as well. What's the issue? Oh, yes, man. So first I'll quickly make a post request so that we can actually go ahead and add some data, right? So I'll go to controller, I'll make a post request. So for making post request, I have to use post mapping, right? So it's a post mapping. And in this, I'll use the same URL as the get mapping. So users, okay? And I'll create a public user. You can say save user, something like that. Okay, so hmm, save user, save user. Okay, now it's going to have a user variable. Okay, and how I'm going to get a user variable? I'm going to get it from a request body. Now what is going to be a request body? Basically, along with this request, I'm going to send JSON data. That data is going to be converted into this object. It's going to be called, it's this is called deserializing. Okay, it's going to be deserialized into an object, and then it's going to be stored. Okay, so let's see. So I'll call return service dot. Okay, got it. What was the issue? um Sorry, not get user, man, not get user. Something called update user, right? um Update user. Okay, let's call update user. It's gonna work same thing. Okay, update user, and in update user, what I am going to do is in update user, you can make one more function, but it's going to do the same thing, so I'm not doing it. It's going to do repo dot save this entity. Okay, it's just going to say that is this entity. If the id collides, okay, if the id collides, it's going to be overwritten. Okay, this is how update going to work. Now one more thing that we need to add is we need to add auto wide. Okay, what this auto wide does is it declares this as a spring bean basically. So what it's going to do is that it's going to give this variable to spring to handle it. That's what AutoWire does. It's going to automatically create the object of this type repo. Okay, and it's going to use it. Now you might think, why is it necessary to do this AutoWire? We can just do equals to new repo. Okay, it's pretty simple. But you can understand that uh, when you create application like this, there can be a lot of dependencies. Okay, this repo can be dependent on something else. That class can be dependent on something else. So AutoWires handle all that complexity for you. Okay, and then where is it? In my service implementation, okay, in my controller implementation, again I need auto wiring. Okay, I need to auto wire to create this service at the rate auto wire. Okay, seems cool. Let's run my application to see what's going on. Okay. Okay, guys, so actually I encountered some issue and the issue was quite lame, but it's now working. So what was basically happening was I named this class as user stocks. Okay, and combining user and stock, the table for the combined table was getting repeated. Okay, this was also called user stock, and the combined table, which will have foreign keys for both, was also named user stock. So it was throwing me an error, and now it's fine. Okay, so it's working now. So I've cleared this, and our project is actually working now. Okay, and change a few things like I've reverted it back to the normal port of 8080, and nothing more changes are there. It's definitely the same. So now we have user, we have user stock, we have implemented user service, the get all user and get users and post user methods have been implemented. Okay, so let's show it to you now. Over here it's postman. Okay, I've added one and just tested it out, so it's working. So as you can see, I can go to this localhost slash users. So you can see in your controller slash user is get mapping. It gets you all the user. And if I look at the Postman, you can easily see that when I put send, I get all the users that I have right now and the stocks that they have. Okay. Um, Now let's make a post request with someone else. I It can be anything. Shake. Okay. Balance as 10,000 in account. Take video. Okay. Now let's have um, Apple. Purchase price of $1,000 perhaps, of $100. Quantity 100. Fine. I can add one more ticker. That means one more stock in this. Um, so you might be thinking, who the hell? Why the hell we have to write so much JSON to post in the data? But this thing will be handled by the front end, so you don't have to actually put in data like this. Okay. So let's give some more stock. IBM. Its name is International Business Machine. Okay, let's make a request. Okay, it had some errors. What error does it have? Let's see. Okay, so I think our structure is really weird. It's actually one too many. Um, okay, तो duplicate आ रहा है. Duplicate नहीं आना चाहिए. Duplicate तो नहीं आना चाहिए because मेरे तो link हो रहा है ना. It should not be duplicate. Let's see. Show tables, user stocks. Um, it is one to many mapping, right? So it's should work. It is one to many user stock. User stock. So it should be able to have many values. Um, okay, so what I've done now is basically I modified my stock. So it was showing some issues, so I basically added an ID. It's not the best approach right now, but okay, let's work it out. Okay, so I made it one to many. Okay, so the issue that was coming was it was throwing that IBM primary value already. Now I'm just going to call return service dot delete user ID. Okay, let's stop it and rewrite to see whether we have some errors or not. Hello, hello, hello. Okay, so I think I was not audible for a while. I'm sorry, but okay. So we have implemented our delete service. I think you saw it how it was done. Pretty simple. we just call we just find out the entire entity by find by id and then delete it. Okay, simple. And then let's go to postman, make a delete request, user slash id1. So Abhishek should be deleted, and I think it has been deleted. So get all users and see. Okay, so as you can see, Abhishek has been easily deleted. So that was it, guys. It was a very simple API to manage users. Okay, obviously a lot of things can be done in it, and we can create a bunch of other APIs to handle different things and make the entirety of Zerodha. Now it's a very basic thing. It's just a CRUD application on MySQL database, and we have not even used a lot of functionalities from JPA. We haven't touched Hibernate. We haven't used a lot of fancy stuff. We have just extended the JPA repository and used inbuilt functions. That's it. Okay, so let's revise it a bit. So to make any API in a proper way, in a proper methodological way, what you do is for you first create the entities that you need. I need user and user stocks. Then I create the controller. So what controller does it is responsible for mapping. Okay, that means at what it basically means at what URL, what functionalities will be called. Then what the controller does it calls the service layer, and service layer is responsible for doing the business task, or basically responsible for doing the logic behind any of the function calls. And our repository layer is where we get our data from. So these all layers work together to form this REST API. Okay, so that was it. I hope you like it. So this is my local host. You can go ahead and write users. Okay, so in your browser as well you can see it. You get data, but obviously postman is a much better tool for this. And yeah, anything else? Yeah. One more thing that I can try, one more thing I can try before leaving is show you a more feature of controller. Okay. Now you in your program you might have a bunch of controllers. For example, right now I'm just handling stocks, so users. I might make a controller to handle stocks. Okay, to update and delete and again a CRUD on stocks. I might make a controller to buy sell stocks, right? I might make a controller to dashboard where your all profit loss stuff is shown. So you can have a bunch of controllers and you can have a mapping to a controller, specific controller, right? So for that, I have request mapping, not rest, request mapping. Okay, so when I do this request mapping, basically all the requests that comes to slash users will go to this controller and then followed by the rest of the mapping. Okay, so over here get mapping, just slash, just again a slash, and so you don't have to repeat users all the time, right? So you can do in this way as well. Okay, now let's rerun it and see whether this thing works or something breaks. Okay, so let's get all the users. 404 not found. Okay, it should work. Hmm, no. Okay, send value equal to blank. It should work, man. Come on. Mm. Okay, so the thing we talked about, it's working completely. Okay, so as you can see, it can work in this way as well. So you have a request mapping for the entire controller, and then you have different values for all the mappings. Okay, so just here, again, it will work the same way. Okay, if I want to get a specific user, I am getting a specific user. Let's make a post request with some other name. Okay, method not allowed. Why method not allowed, bro? Let's see. So errors will keep on coming, man. Post mapping slash. This also works. So delete also works. No, delete also doesn't work because okay, that was already deleted. Um, okay, it got deleted as well. I mean, the post mapping doesn't work. I have to look into it why the post mapping doesn't work in this manner. It says method is not allowed in request mapping. Okay, that's okay. So method is not allowed in request mapping. Okay, yeah, yeah. Okay, sorry. Yeah, it's working. I do sometimes do stupid stuff. Uh, I was making the post request at slash some ID. Okay, uh, that's a bit foolish, but okay, this is how it works, and I hope you understand about REST APIs now. Uh, now, so cool. See you in next video. Thank you.